Hi everybody, and welcome back to the Mainframe Virtual Summit. The topic for this session, DevOps and speed and innovation on the mainframe. Does that sound contradictory? Well, think again. Now, before we get started, I want to give a reminder. You can live tweet the event using the hashtag Mainframe Summit you see on your screen, and you can follow along the live Twitter stream on your webcast console. With that, let's welcome our panelists. First up is Melinda Ballou, Research Director, Application Lifecycle Management at IDC. Melinda, welcome.
It's great to be here, thanks.
Thanks. We also have Dana Boudreau, who's the product lead from Mainframe DevOps at CA Technologies. Dana.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. And also Stephen Filoni, who's the VP of Product Management with CA Technologies as well. Stephen, thanks for joining us.
Hi.
This is going to be a great session, and let's start right off with you, Melinda. Let's talk about the state of the state for DevOps.
So what we're finding is that organizations are ranging from ad hoc approaches to DevOps where they're fractured across different teams, and we developed this maturity model to give people an opportunity to have some scaffolding about determining where they're at and how they're evolving, how they can evolve further to more optimized stages for their DevOps strategies. And so we find this useful to them, and also moving from these more fractured approaches to better teamwork, to repeatable automation, and then enabling continuous feedback across teams with more managed types of approaches to optimize for high performance services delivery. And the biggest change that's required for making that transition to DevOps is the cultural and process change. It's extremely challenging for human beings to change their behavior. We're way more wired for consistency than we are for change. And so I like to say that Darwin was right, but only when death was the alternative. And so having some sort of structures around how to move forward is important for an area that's driving organizations towards better execution in highly dynamic competitive environments, and also addressing both technical and technical change and innovation, as well as the need for regulatory compliance internationally and locally, domestically.
Excellent, thanks. I want to turn to some of the challenges. It's a question that came up in our last panel, and that was, mainframe, just another platform, or is it a special case? Dana, talk about that.
Well, I think it definitely has some special characteristics. As you said in the last panel, we talked about security, and Jamie talked about the Z14 and constant encryption. Ashok talked about how the world expects mainframe applications to be like electricity. They never go down, they never get interrupted. And those applications put us on the moon some 50 years ago, and how some of those same applications are running today and evolving to the new technology. So the mainframe platform from an application development is unique. The expectations are very high, and the applications, they've been around a while and they're evolving. So I think the platform does have some unique challenges and some unique responsibilities.
Stephen, what's your take?
So every platform has unique challenges. So there's the mainframe, you have Unix, you have Windows, you have mobile devices. All those have some unique characteristics, but if you're trying to move forward, what you have to do is you have to work together to get them all in a line to Agile, DevOps, continuous delivery. Mainframe from that point of view is just like other applications or parts of applications. They're an important piece, and if we want to do DevOps correctly, we have to bring them into the fold. We cannot leave mainframe out.
One of the challenges that many organizations have experienced is they're not encompassing mainframe as part of their DevOps strategies. And mainframe systems of record are driving businesses, probably 60, 70% of what businesses do. And to Steve's and also to Dana's point, organizations are afraid to touch them because they don't want to break them. And so part of what needs to happen is encompassing the mainframe as part of that DevOps strategy, and then also shifting what organizations are doing to encompass mainframe as well as these more modern platforms.
We talked about at the beginning the 5 steps. Let's walk through these, and I think Melinda, you're going to help us walk through these.
Sure. So we have the graphic up here. One of the key things that organizations also don't typically think about, or are increasingly beginning to think about now, is upfront architectural design and embedding security in for greater resilience of the applications that you're creating, as well as needing to deploy on multimodal platforms, so from mobile to the mainframe to embedded IoT systems. Also delivering with Agile capabilities and processes. So we see Agile not merely for developers, but also for businesses who are trying to be much more iterative and responsive to these changing competitive environments. Motivating millennial developers, which we'll be talking about shortly as well, pretty critical as we see people retiring and leaving the workforce, a significant brain drain with regards to those who understand how to build and create and manage and move along with these legacy platforms. So how do we motivate millennials to engage? Automating continuous test and delivery pipeline. That's fairly critical as well, because these pedantic and sort of structured approaches don't work when you're trying to iterate continuously, and then the quality isn't there when you deploy. So automating this continuous test and delivery pipeline provides both consistent information with common tools, and also gives information for metrics and making a transition to better approaches. Shifting left with the operations intelligence into the development process we see as being critical as well. So instead of putting stuff in at the end, you're initiating with effective requirements and quality approaches, as well as change management up front, rather than dealing with problems that would continue later. We find that fixing problems earlier in the life cycle saves significant amounts of, anywhere to 30 to 90% more if you find these problems early in the development process rather than in production. So those would be some of the 5 principles that we wanted to make sure that we touched on today, and we'll go through in greater detail, I think, now.
Yeah, I wanted to start with you, Dana. We talked in the last about DevSecOps and embedding security. Highlight that for the viewers. The embed security as a design principle.
Yeah, I think Stuart in the last panel summed it up really, really well. Security is not about just penetration testing at the end of the cycle. It's got to get factored in, as Melinda said, right up front in the design. It needs to be part of your development steps. It needs to be part of your testing. It needs to be integrated in any automation you do. And then, of course, penetration testing is equally important as part of the overall cycle.
Stephen, anything you'd like to highlight here as you talk to your customers and in the field?
Well, when I hear about DevSecOps, I've heard other things as well. There's Biz, Dev, SecOps, Biz, Ops, Biz, Dev, Test, Ops, all these things. But really what it comes down to is DevOps, and what does it mean? You're breaking the silos across everything. Testing, security, operations, it all gets broken down. People just get too hung up on Dev and Ops. It's everything. Everything has to be broken down. Everything has to be collaborative. Walls are no longer there, and you've got to stop thinking about just handing things off. Everyone has to be involved in everything.
And I think that's what continuous and agile mean
Yes.
as part of the DevOps lifecycle.
Correct.
And security and quality in particular need to be bound together in ways that they often aren't. And we're seeing that evolving from more mature organizations that IDC deals with.
Yeah, and with that, that's another thing. When you said quality, security is part of quality. But what you hear is there's functional quality and then there's non-functional quality. Everything else is non-functional. But you have security, you have performance, you have many other things in there. But it should all be part of that same life cycle and should be all taken with the same level of priority.
I think what I'm distilling here is that need for visibility and agile and that visibility into the process. Talk a little bit of that, Melinda. We'll skip ahead to talk about agile.
Yeah, well, in terms of the visibility that you have, part of that is having effective iterative communication and collaboration across teams. So rather than just moving through blanket from beginning to the end, you have these short cycles and iterative frameworks with your user stories, your epics, and the scrums that you're doing and the sprints that you're doing, and using those kinds of approaches. So there's also visibility from the perspective of the automated tools that give organizations a common platform and the ability to take those metrics and then apply them for continuous change. Rather than being stuck in the old ways of doing things, you have a perspective and the ability to see what worked, what didn't work, and then move forward with the type of velocity that organizations have to have now to be competitive.
Let's talk about the developer experience. How can we get millennials interested in developing on the mainframe?
Well, one of the key things is having automated tools that enable millennials to deal with the mainframe in ways that they haven't been perceived that way before. So green screens are just not a possibility, right? Pulling in current processes like agile types of approaches to developing with a mainframe. And I see actually across many of the companies that I deal with is that they're looking at automated tools that enable them as polyglots, millennials typically speak are developing with many different kinds of languages. And so mainframe languages are just additional languages. And if you destigmatize that by providing modern tools that enable a different kind of approach and enable the millennials to be able to do that kind of development work that they've done elsewhere in mainframe environments, that's one piece of it. Another is to also emphasize the importance of the mainframe in driving competitive positioning and organizational execution. So part of being inspired to do something is that it's going to make a difference to the world. And it's not merely that the tools are better, but it's also that 60 to 70% of organizations and enterprises are running their businesses on the mainframe. And I think that needs to be a combination both of better tooling, effective processes, and also articulating that message of you can make a difference here as we're having this incredible departure of those with knowledge about it. And I think that you guys probably have some additional comments about the ways in which you can effectively deliver technology to make that possible.
Yeah, so we're seeing more and more attention to customers that have implemented DevOps, implemented Agile in the non-mainframe space, and they want to bring Agile into the mainframe space, and they want to break down the barriers of millennials being able to get to the mainframe. And as you said, modern development environments are important to not scare them off from those green screens. And we see productivity improvement coming from being able to take all the tooling and put them in a single pane of glass, things like 20% improvement in productivity. And of course, that comes with the quality improvements that come with that as well.
When it comes to millennials, millennials are in their first, second, maybe third job, but they're just starting out really. And what they're looking for is they want to make sure the skills that they're going to learn at a job is going to help them in their career. And a lot of them think that if they work on the mainframe, that's not going to help their career because that's not something that's perceived as moving forward, even though we all know and we heard about how the mainframe's moving forward. But if you can bring in the Agile practices, the DevOps practices, the continuous delivery, you bring in those practices, that helps them gain skills that they know they can use moving forward. Plus, millennials want to make sure that what they're doing actually makes a difference, right? They don't want to think, a lot of people say, oh, I'm just doing it for a job, I'm just doing it for a paycheck. Millennials seem to not have necessarily that. They want to make sure they're making a difference either for the company or for other things. So you have to show that. And I think we do a disservice a lot of times when we keep talking about mainframe and saying legacy, right? Mainframe, yes, has been around for a while. There are legacy things on mainframes. But mainframes are moving forward. Mainframes are, even new technology companies still use mainframe, new technology companies. So I just don't think people understand that. So it's not just legacy, it's also in the future as well.
The term systems of record also is helpful towards that, right? Rather than legacy.
Yes.
It's another way to make it obvious what it is and what it provides. But still, I agree with you completely.
Let's turn to testing, continuous delivery. What are some of the challenges there and the complexities and best practices?
So we see as organizations try to move to more agile approaches to testing that it's really challenging to make that transition. When we talk about continuous test, continuous integration, continuous delivery, there are challenges around how you take these fractured groups and these fractured tests and pull them together. There are challenges around infrastructure. So continuous integration with service virtualization provides virtual infrastructure to create production systems that enable organizations to have access to those virtually, and that's helpful. The continuous delivery piece has to do with the sheer velocity that organizations find that they have to get these applications out faster, both for competitive purposes, for compliance purposes, and to meet changing technology needs that organizations and their customers have. So as part of that automation process, you provide consistent access to common capabilities and visibility into common information about where the organization is at with regards to testing their environments and also to the deployment piece. So I'm encouraged by the range of automated tools that I'm seeing that are being made available now, and also the shift in processes to adopting those tools in agile ways. And I think that you have some comments on that too.
Yeah. So There are a lot of automation tools. There's lots of different processes different people are using, different parts of organization are using, and using technology to bring the different disparate pieces together and being able to tie it all together for purposes of understanding what's going on in the development process, being able to have metrics of what worked and what didn't work, so when you do retrospectives you can improve. Those are things that we're seeing using technology to bring different tools together, different touch points, and having some analytics. The other thing that we're seeing is to be able to separate the different roles that automation, so there's testers, there's developers. Developers are focused on writing code and providing the data to do the testing. There are testers that are writing the automated test scripts, and then there are deployment scripts and there are test environment development scripts. And being able to separate those so that each role can play their part and have technology tie it all together for continuous delivery is another thing we're seeing customers ask for.
So I'll take that one step further. As opposed to just the separations, we're actually seeing, because we're talking about these walls, that these are coming together. There might be a developer and a tester, but they're actually in the same Agile teams. And whether that's an Agile team for a distributed application or a mainframe application, we're also seeing them have the ability to have the scripts, the testing scripts, automatically created. One of the ways, if you're talking about continuous testing, which is part of continuous delivery, it's really hard to do that when you have to go back and keep changing your scripts, right? Having these scripts automatically created and managed for you is a key. And CA has a lot of different products that can help manage this entire process, from requirements all the way through delivery, whether that's on distributed or with the mainframe as well.
The other piece too, I think it's important, is to bring the business in. So the prioritization around what's most important to the business with value-driven and risk-based testing. So both for what the business gains out of it and what needs to be avoided from a risk perspective. The other piece is the role that cognitive and machine learning are beginning to play with predictive analytics. So you can take that data and say, okay, in these circumstances with these teams and these kinds of problems, we saw these sorts of issues. We expect to see that evolve in certain kinds of ways based on cognitive application and underlying structure for those capabilities. Increasingly, we expect to see more of that moving into the next couple of years.
And that's a key point, because when it comes to Agile, it's constant change. You learn from what you do when you change. A lot of people don't understand that. They think Agile is just one thing, you do it and you're done. It's constant change. So you have to get the analytics, you have to learn, you have to change, you have to modify. And when people first go to Agile, especially with the mainframe, there's going to be problems. They're going to have speed bumps. They have to know they're going to hit those speed bumps, be willing to accept it, move on.
So something else you brought up earlier, Melinda, was about service virtualization. We haven't touched on it, but a lot of clients are talking about multi-speed development, where you've got different parts of the application being developed at different speeds. How do you test, how do you automate when you've got an application that's maybe off-host being changed at a faster pace than the on-host pieces? And service virtualization is a technology that helps you bridge that gap, and a lot of clients are asking for that kind of information too.
Exactly.
In the few minutes we have left, just quick takeaways, one or two takeaways you want to highlight, and we'll start with you, Melinda.
So for me, probably the critical pieces around moving to effective DevOps strategy that encompasses systems of record with a mainframe would be process change. And setting the stage for your organizations through mentoring and effective engagement with more agile and adaptive types of processes, and then evaluating and adopting as appropriate the automated technologies that are going to map best to your level of maturity, understanding where you are, and then moving forward, leveraging that and supporting also the emerging multimodal platform deployments across the other areas that you have to deploy on from those systems of record, whether it's mobile or moving into embedded and IoT. So those would be the three key areas that I'd see organizations needing to focus on moving forward.
Dana Boudreau, final thoughts?
Yeah, 55% of applications touch the mainframe. Great opportunity to bring new people onto the platform. Millennials ought to find that terribly exciting. It is what runs the world. It's important we bring them to the platform.
Excellent. Stephen Filoni?
You have to go, people in the mainframe have to get over onto this DevOps platform. They need new blood coming in. They have to do the DevOps in order to stay relevant for competitive reasons. Don't boil the ocean. Don't start it all at once. Pick the places where either you have the best knowledge to start with, or where you see the biggest pain point. Start there and then move out. Don't try to do it all at once.
I hate to say it, we're out of our time for this session. I want to give a big thanks to Melinda Ballou, Dana Boudreau, Stephen Filoni. Thank you so much for your expertise and insights. Stay tuned, everyone, for our next session. If you want to learn more about app development from CA Technologies, check out the resources on your screen, the URL, CA, you can see it on your screen. I apologize for that. And don't forget, you can also download a variety of resources, white papers, solution briefs, etc., from the resources section of your player. And with that, we are at the end of our time. Thanks for joining us, and stay tuned. After a short break, we'll be back to tackle how intelligence and automation delivers on the promise of the self-driving data center.